Hi artists, I'm going to show you how to make a tree weaving on a paper plate today. So here are the supplies you are going to need. First off, you need a nice thick plate. These are the Chinette ones, thick paper plates. You are going to need the tree template plate, which shows you where to cut. You're going to need scissors, pen or a pencil, you need your yarn, and then optional is a needle as well. So I'm going to show you what to do after you already paint the background, because that's different for each person. So let's pretend this has a nice painted background. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tree template plate and my pen or pencil. I want to line it up so the two notches on top compared to the 10 bottom, two are at the top of mine. So if I had painted mine, I want to make sure the two are at the top. I'm actually going to flip it over. And I'm going to put the template one on top of it. So there's little notches. You're going to take your pen or pencil and just make a mark for each notch. There's 2 on the top, 10 on the bottom. It's just one individual little line for each notch. Take that off. There we go. Now we know where to cut on our plate. And you're cutting just this outer rim. Okay? Cut all the way in to where the rim ends. So again, 10 on the bottom, 2 on top. All right, so I'm going to actually number these notches with a pen so it's a little bit easier for you to understand. I would not recommend you do this, but I think it's helpful. So the ones on the top, I got a number 1 and a number 2. Oops, that's a 2. And then we're gonna go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This way, when I mention which little notch or cut you're going into, you can tell by the numbers. All right, so we have a nice piece of yarn that's already cut out to the right measurement. Ooh, I also realized we need a little piece of tape. Let me grab mine. All right, little piece of tape. We are gonna take our yarn, and I'm gonna take just a little tail, just a couple inches long, and I'm gonna put it through notch 1. So majority of the yarn is on the front. I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm going to tape this yarn down. Okay, so it's not taking up too much space. Press it down around it so you know it's gonna stick. And there we go, so yarn's coming out, notch 1. Now here is the order to weave. So I came out 1, I'm gonna go in notch 3. Now you want the yarn to be tight, but not so tight that the plate bends, right? We don't want it bent. We want the plate to stay flat. So tight enough, but not so tight that the plate moves. So in notch 3, and then I'm gonna come straight out notch 4. So it just loops around the back side. So in 3, out 4, back up in number 1, out number 2. Now we go the other side. In number 12, again tight but not too tight, out 11. Then we go back up to the top. Oops, my yarn's tangling. In through number 2, out through number 1. Now we go, the next one's over. So we're gonna go in number 5, out number 6, in 1, out 2. Next one's over, so in 10, out number 9, back up to the top, in 2, out 1, down to the bottom. We got 2 left, so we're gonna go in 7, out 8. Now when we come back up to the top, I notice there's more on the number 1 than there is on the number 2, so I'm gonna put my last one through number 2. Okay, so you'll notice none of these pieces of yarn crisscross. If there are crisscrosses, you did something wrong. There's also nothing around the back of the plate, only just the little spots on the top and bottom. So I went into, I'm gonna come back out 1. Now we want to cinch the top together because our tree should have a nice point at the top. So I'm gonna take my little tail and I'm just going to wrap it around all my strands 3 times. Okay, 1, 2, 2 or 3, depends how long a strand you have left. Nice, that tied it to a nice triangle shape, which will be great for our tree. Now we need to get our next piece of yarn. So you get to choose your next color. I'm gonna choose this lime green. So I find my end, there it is. And you want a piece of yarn that is about the length of your arm. So I'm gonna stretch my arm out, about that long, and cut it off. So I need to tie this piece of yarn onto my tail end here. Here's how you tie a knot. I'm gonna take the 2 pieces. I'm gonna make sure it's kind of cinched tight there so I have lots of space to tie. I'm gonna line them up together so the 2 ends are parallel. I'm gonna take my right hand, I'm gonna take 2 fingers, and I'm going to twist the yarn. So it wraps around my 2 fingers and makes a little X. Oops. See that X there? So since my little tail is coming from underneath, I'm gonna wrap around on top, then I'm gonna tuck it in between my 2 fingers. Push it through, now I can pull my fingers out, grab the tail, pull it tight. I like to grab each yarn individually, make sure it's nice and snug. I'm gonna take my scissors and trim off the excess. You wanna make it close, but not so close that the knot comes undone. All right, now we go into weaving. So I think it's really useful to use these little needles. These needles are plastic, they're a bit thicker, so it's not for sewing on cloth, but it is great for weaving. So I'm going to thread my needle. So stick the yarn through. You don't need to tie it off, just have a short little tail. Okay, so I like to keep this loop on the top nice and tight. So I'm gonna use my left hand just to hold it tight so I know that it doesn't come undone. We are going to weave. So we're adding in our weft strands onto our warp. So weft goes to the left and right, warp is up and down. So we're gonna go every other. So I'm gonna come a little lower. I'm gonna go over one, under the next one. Over one, then under one. Over, under, over, under, over, under. So you see how it's every other strand? And I'm going to pull all that yarn through, even the little knot. So I'm gonna trade hands here. Pull that knot through too. And you notice I'm sliding it up to the top, all the way as high as I can, right around those original loops, making sure I get all that excess. The first 3 rows are really hard to see, so don't be discouraged if you're like, wait, where'd it go? I don't see anything. That's okay. Now on the next row, I wanna see how did I end that first row? I ended by going under this last one. So you see how this one's under here? So that means on row 2, I wanna start by going over, because you wanna go opposite. So I'll go over, under, over, under, over, under. There we go, over, under. Double check, is it every other? Yep. Pull it all the way through. And then before I pull all the excess, I like to slide it up as high as I can. I think it's a little bit easier to slide it up before I pull that excess. Now I'm gonna pull it through, knot's coming with it. There we go. Now I don't wanna pull it so tight that it distorts my triangle shape, so just tight enough. Make sure it's slid all the way to the top. There we go. Row 3, I look, see I went under my last one, so now I need to start with over, over, under, over, under, over, under. Pull it through, slide it up nice and high, pull that knot through, and make sure it's up tight. So again, keeping this to make that triangle shape. I wouldn't want to pull it so tight that it makes a straight line. If you notice that, you gotta kind of pull it back, loosen it up a bit. There you go. And we just keep following this process. Always do different than the row before. So if I ended with under, now I start with over. Every other one, pull it through, slide it up. Now with this one, my knot is gonna be partially in the middle. So if I pull it up tight, I notice my knot's kind of in the middle there. That's fine. I just wanna slide it all the way up, and then I'm just gonna take my knot and I'm gonna poke it to the backside. Now no one will ever see. And I just keep going. Over, under, over, under, over, under. Pull it through. Oops, don't lose my tail there. Slide it up. Get the excess out. And you'll see as we start to get more with this new color, you'll really start to see that woven design showing up, that checkerboard. Okay, and again, don't pull so tight that it distorts the triangle, and always push each row up afterwards. I like to use my fingers, or I'll even use the needle and kind of push it up. But you see how it's making that checkerboard? That's exactly what we want it to look like. And you keep going. Now I'm gonna show you something that you might notice happen that you want to avoid. If this happens, where you weave it, you go every other, and you pull it through, and as you're pulling through, you notice it pulls out the last row that you did. See how it's pulling it out? That means that you started the row wrong. You always gotta make sure you check row above, how did you end? If this row ended with under, that means I must start with over. Okay, you gotta go opposite of the row before it to make sure that it keeps that woven design. All right, now let's talk extra decorations. Let's say in this row, I want to add some beads. Now beads are optional, make it kind of look like ornaments. If we look at my example here, I have some pearl colored beads. These are totally optional, but if you want to include them, here is what you do. So I pull through my row that I want my bead to be on. I actually pull it all the way through. I'm not gonna worry about making it super tight, but I wanna get it fairly close. And then I need to grab my beads and decide. So I think I might go with a colored bead. Maybe I'll go with a pink one this time. I'm gonna grab a pink bead. Now the beads don't fit over the needle, so you have to take the needle off. You're gonna thread the bead onto your yarn. Now this can be a little bit of a pain. You might have to twist that yarn, get it to stick. Might even have to trim off a frayed bit. We wanna put the bead on. Now you gotta decide where is the bead going to be. And I literally just kind of push it back until I decide, okay, maybe I want my bead to be there. Make it so it's a part that's sticking up, and boom, there you got the bead. I recommend if you're going to do beads for ornaments, do them every 3 to 5 rows. Definitely not every other row, that's too many beads. And you'll see as I get this next one on and slide it up, it just fits in with the row. So I'd maybe do a few more rows down, and then maybe I'd put a bead in a different spot. I wouldn't want to line them up perfectly straight. I'll put them in different spots every time. And there you have it. There's the main bit. I'm going to continue weaving out this tree until I get down close to the bottom, and I'll show you how to do the trunk. So I'm going to speed this through to show you how to do that base. So as you see, I have filled up the majority of my tree. I've still got that nice triangle shape. All my little knots are poked to the back. So every time I ran out of yarn, I just tied on a new string. I chose this one to be all one solid color. You can do stripes of different greens. It's totally your choice. I also chose not to add any more of the ornaments just so you can see what it looks like smooth. So I've gone majority of the way to the bottom. We've got about like 1.5 inches left here. Not that much space. Now is time to make the trunk. So here's what you do. You need some brown yarn. I'm personally going to use this one that's got a couple different shades in it. I think it makes it look a lot more like tree bark. Same thing, I'm gonna get a nice long piece, maybe a bit longer than my arm. I'm gonna cut it off. And I need to tie it on to my existing green. Now I don't have much green left here, so I'm actually going to pull it back a couple strands just so I have a little bit more. I'm gonna tie my knot on. Twist, pull it out, tight, trim the excess. Now, since mine has a little bit of green left, I'm going to weave it back all the way across, again using my needle. When yarn does that, you just gotta twist it back up. There we go. So I notice I ended with under, so I'm gonna finish this one over, under, under. There we go. Pull it through. Ooh, not my yarn. Whenever that happens, you want to slowly fix it before that knot gets pulled too tight. There we go. All right, now I'm going to go back, but our trunk is only going to be used these 4 center ones. So it's number 6, 7, 8, and 9, these 4 center ones. So I'm going to go back weaving, and I'm going to end on 9. So here I would end with over 9. So I'm going to pull that through. Get that knot hidden underneath. It's okay if there's a little bit of brown across the bottom, no big deal. But we're turning on 9, so there's gonna be 3 left on the outside. So I'm gonna wrap, since I ended with over 9, I'm gonna go under. So I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna end on number 6. So again, there's 3 left on the side. I'm gonna pull this through. So see how it turns around sooner. 6, I ended with over, so I'm gonna go under. 1, 2, 3. 4th one is 9. Pull that through. So it's that same process, but we're only weaving these 4 center green warp strands. We're leaving those outside 3 empty. Now, again, we want to make sure don't pull it tight. We don't want that to happen. We want to keep just a nice straight kind of rectangle we're filling down. And you want to do as many rows as you can all the way to the very bottom of the plate. I'll speed through this and show you how to tie it off and add the last final bell at the top or ornament at the very top if you would like. So a great little trick when you get to the bottom and it becomes hard to weave, push up that stump area, the trunk, up a little higher. That'll give you a little bit more room just to get a couple more rows, and then you can spread it back out. This is a great way to make sure the trunk is nice and thick and it's a little bit easier to weave. So I'm getting just a few more here. There we go. And once we like it, I can take my needle and kind of spread it back out a little bit to make it a little bit more even. So I got just a short tail. Yours might be a little longer, but I finished it off. To tie it off to finish, I'm literally just going to tie this last piece of brown on the strand that I ended on. So I ended over here on number 9. Doesn't matter where it's at. You can literally just tie it onto that strand. So I'm going to push to give myself some space, and I'm going to tie a knot. Make sure it's nice and tight. Trim off the excess, and then kind of re-separate them, fluff them out. At this point, I like to double check if any knots are showing. I kind of readjust a little bit to help them get hidden and tucked underneath. Sometimes I'll use my needle to kind of poke them under things so they kind of stay hidden out of the way. All right. So now that we got our tree, let's talk about if you want to add anything at the top. So like mine has a bell that you could add, or I also have some fun other beads. Some of them kind of look like stars at the top. These are only for top decorations because they're extra special and a little bit bigger. It's your call if you would like to add one or not. Here's what you do. I'm gonna do a red one. So let's show you how you do this. I'm gonna grab one piece of yarn. Doesn't really matter what color, because it's just gonna be to attach it to the top. And it only needs to be, not too long. I'd say maybe about the width of your plate. Even that's probably way too much, but it'll make tying a knot easier. So just a short piece. And very carefully, we gotta thread it through that bead or the bell. Bells have a little spot you can tie them on as well. Now these ones are a little bit of a pain to try to thread, so it might take a little bit of work. Sometimes you can use your needle to kind of help push and poke that yarn through. Come on, yarn. Come on, get it. There we go. Poked it through enough that I'm able to grab it. Nice. So again, these ones have a little bit smaller holes. Same with the bells. So it's a little bit more of a pain to tie them on. So you want to put it kind of somewhere in the middle. And we are literally just going to tie it around the very top. So I'll wrap one piece of yarn underneath. I will tie it on nice and tight. And I want my knot to be opposite of where the bead or bell is. So I might kind of push it to the back for a second, tie it on tight, and then spin it back around. I like to do 2 knots, just regular knots like you're tying a shoe. Trim off the excess, and then twist it around so it is on the top. And there you have it. There is your finished tree. Again, ornaments, bell, thing at the top's totally up to you. One color or many color. But there you have it, guys. There is your woven tree on a plate. Can't wait to see how they turn out.